What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. I wanted to just talk to you guys about a recent near-death experience that I had, and this happened over Labor Day weekend 2022, okay? And I want to just share with you guys what happened and the lessons learned from this experience, because I think that you guys can learn something from my unfortunate situation. And so basically, I almost died the Friday before Labor Day this year, okay? Some crazy guy tried to hit me and my fiance with his car while we were on the interstate going south to Tennessee to visit my parents, okay? So for those of you guys who don't know, I live in Pennsylvania now. Even though my name is NYPrepper on YouTube, I live in Pennsylvania. I've been living here for the last year and a half or so. And so my parents live in Tennessee, and I went to visit them for Labor Day. And, I was really excited to see them because I didn't see them for a couple of months. So it was really exciting, and I wasn't really in my normal frame of mind. Like, normally I'm very alert and aware of everything, and I'm much more detail oriented. But because I was just so excited to see my parents and to visit them and see Tennessee again, I wasn't really focusing like I normally do. And it's been a really difficult year for me and my parents, my family. I found out in late 2021 that my dad had stage 4 lung cancer, and miraculously, he's still alive, and he's actually doing really well. They gave him a special type of medicine. They didn't have to do chemo, and they didn't have to do radiation. It was like a targeted gene therapy pill that they gave him, and it shrunk all the tumors. So it's a real blessing from God that he's doing well, and we're able to still go hunting together and spend time together. And he's not that old, and his cancer was a very rare cancer. It's like 10% of all lung cancers, and it's 100% genetic. So there's nothing he could have done to, stop it. It was in his genes. So, but because it is so rare, it's very treatable, and it has a high survival rate, okay? But because of that, it's kind of changed my life. And, with that in the back of my mind, I was just focusing on having a good time, spending time with him, because I'm thinking in the back of my mind, who knows if he's going to be around much longer. He's doing well, but still in the back of your mind, you think, okay, you don't know how much longer this person's going to be around. So you're really just kind of focusing on that person. And I wasn't really in my normal frame of mind, being very aware and stuff like that. Just so excited to see him and my mom. And so anyway, we're driving on Interstate 81, and, we're going south, and it's around like 10 p.m. or actually it was 9:30 p.m. So it was already dark. It was, way past sunset. And we were down in southwestern Virginia. Okay, this happened just south of Roanoke, around exit 98, okay? If you guys want to look it up on the map, it was right before exit 98, okay, on I-81 southbound, all right? So we were going down south, probably just 2 hours away from my parents, and we're driving, and I was actually on my laptop, and my fiance was driving, and I was on my laptop actually researching information for update that I was going to do for my channel. I was in the process of just researching about Ukraine and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, my fiance just slams on the brakes, and I look away from my laptop, and I see this car swerving out from the shoulder right in front of us. Okay, so basically, imagine you're driving, and this was in the right lane. We were driving in the right lane, okay? So we were in the right lane. We were going around probably 65. The speed limit was 70. We were doing about 65 or so, just comfortably cruising. And all of a sudden, basically, this guy was basically parked on the shoulder, okay, at a dead stop. And he basically turned his car right into our lane, okay, into the right lane from the shoulder. But it wasn't like he was trying to merge, because, you know, when people try to get back onto the highway, you know, they speed up, and then they speed up, and then they kind of merge onto the right lane. He wasn't trying to do that. He literally cut his steering wheel like he wanted to basically hit us head on. So the car was at a dead stop in the shoulder, and so we're driving along, okay, 65 miles an hour, when all of a sudden, from a dead stop, he just turns his car literally like 90 degrees. So his car was basically perpendicular to the highway, and we were on track to slam right into him head on, okay? He basically cut his wheel it seemed like he wanted to hit us, okay? It seemed like he wanted to hit us with his car. Why? I have no idea. Was he on meth? Was he suicidal? Does he have mental issues, you know, schizophrenia? I have no idea, okay? But it seemed to me, based on what happened, that he was either intoxicated, mentally ill, or suicidal, because nobody would do that, okay? No, under normal situations, you would not just cut your wheel to the left from basically a dead stop and just jump right out into the lane where you have cars going 60, 70 miles an hour. And so my fiance, she didn't panic, which is really good. She slammed on the brakes, and she had to actually swerve out of the way, all right? And because we were going 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the guy swerves out like 20 yards in front of us. So she slammed on the brakes. The wheels were, the tires were screeching, okay? So our car was sliding on dry pavement. That's how fast we were going. She slammed on the brakes, and then she cut the wheel to the left, and she was able to slide out of the way. But we literally missed him by inches, okay? Inches. It was absolutely crazy. And then, if that's not bad enough, okay, so that was enough to really, kind of like wake you up. If, I was kind of like a little bit tired, it was getting late, and that basically woke me up right away, because I was really pissed off. I wanted to jack that guy in the face. Like, why the heck would you do that, So if that wasn't bad enough, we're driving, and then all of a sudden my fiance tells me, look, this guy that almost hit us, he's coming up behind us now. And I was like, what? I thought she was like, mistaking him for another car. I didn't believe it. So then I look in the rear view, and I see him like speeding up to our car, and he's like basically trying to ram the back of our car with his car. And he's like following us on the interstate, okay? He's like tailing us and getting really close to our bumper. And my fiance is like, oh, we should just pull into a gas station or pull in somewhere, get off the highway, because he could try to run us off the highway and flip us over under high speed. And I said, no, you don't want to do that, because if we pull in somewhere, he could follow us. And I don't know if this guy is armed or how many people are in the vehicle, and he could get out and shoot us, or, once we're parked, he could try to ram his car into us. I mean, you just don't know with somebody like that. If they're on meth, they're basically in a state of psychosis. They're not in touch with reality. They could be armed. I mean, who knows? And by the way, I did have my firearm, but it wasn't in the car, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And that's one of the major lessons that I learned from this experience that I think you guys can learn too. So So basically, I told her to stay on the highway because as long as we're on the highway, you know, I felt like we were safer on the highway than pulling off somewhere, because that part of Virginia is also very rural. And, you know, if he were to get out and just shoot us, you know, nobody would even see or anything. So I said, just stay on the highway. And I called 911. They sent me over to the state police, and I told them that there was a guy that basically tried to kill us. You know, he swerved out into our lane trying to hit us from a dead stop, and now he's trying to run us off the road. So they dispatched a trooper. But, you know, I'll tell you guys something, you know, and actually let me continue with the story. So I didn't know what to do at that point because, you know, I didn't feel comfortable that my fiance was driving. If I was behind the wheel, I would feel a little bit more comfortable because I feel like I'm in control, you know, versus my fiance. And nothing against women, but generally speaking, a lot of women in situations like that can be very scared, you know, and panic. And I'm not trying to sound sexist, but, you know, that's just the reality. You know, women and men are different. And I was afraid that, you know, she wouldn't know what to do. She would panic. You know, she's not really a tactical driver. You know, she doesn't know what to do in situations like that. I've actually been pursued before when I was working in nightclubs doing security. I had a guy try to run me off the road one night on a back road in upstate New York when I was driving home from the club that I worked at. This guy followed me all the way home from the club. I guess I must have thrown him out, and he was probably pissed off. And he followed me, and then he tried to run me off the road. He shut his headlights off and tried to ram my car and run me off the road. So I've been in situations like that before. I've been in a lot of different self-defense situations, so I'm able to control my, you know, that panic response. You know, I usually don't panic, but somebody who's never been in a situation like that before has a tendency to panic. So, but she actually did good. So I told her to stay on the highway, and I told her as long as we're on the highway and we maintain a good speed and make it hard for him to get close to us, then we should be pretty good, and the troopers will eventually come because they pinged my location on my phone. So the troopers would eventually get him as long as we stayed on the highway. And I think he realized that, you know, I think he realized that the longer he would follow us, the more likely it would be that we would call 911 and a trooper would come and basically, you know, get him. Okay, so what happened was he started following us, and he kept following us for a while, and then he took an exit, and the exit that he took was exit 98, and I'll never forget that exit number. So he took the exit, and then that was it. You know, that was it. You know, thankfully it didn't escalate beyond that, but we basically almost died, and you know, thank God that we didn't, and you know, thank God that my fiance was able to control her emotions. She didn't panic. She drove very tactically, actually. So I want to share with you guys some of the lessons that I think you can learn from my experience. And number one is police response times, okay? So I called the police, and he was following us for probably a good 5 minutes after I called them, and then he took the exit, and then we kept going down the highway, and we didn't see a trooper coming until another 10 minutes later. We saw a trooper coming from the south going northbound, okay? So if you add that up, that's 15 minutes from the time that I called until the time that they were getting close to where we were. Okay, 15 minutes, that's a long time. So, you know, you have to keep that in mind that, you know, the police can't be everywhere all the time, especially if you live in a rural area or you're driving through a rural area. The police may not be around for you know, 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, depending on where you are. You know, if you're in like eastern Montana and you break down in an Indian reservation, which almost happened to me actually when I was going on a trip to Montana, a road trip. I skid out on some ice doing 55 miles an hour and I was fishtailing on a road like, 200 miles away from the nearest town in the middle of an Indian reservation. In a situation like that, you're on your own. So you need to understand that, you have to have an understanding that you're on your own. Even if you're in a big city, it can take minutes for the cops to show up. And actually, sometimes it takes longer for cops to show up in a big city than in a rural area because of all the traffic and street lights and stuff like that. But that's the number one lesson, okay? Don't rely on the police. They can't be everywhere. So here's a big one, okay? I told you guys that I had my gun with me, and I've talked about how I carry my gun as much as I can. Pretty much all the time I carry something, okay? I carry a firearm almost every time I leave my house. It's very rare that I don't bring a firearm with me when I leave the house, okay? I live in Pennsylvania, which is a gun-friendly state. It's one of the top gun states in the country. Stand your ground law, open carry. We don't have constitutional carry here yet, but the Republican legislators have already proposed it. But we do have a concealed carry permit that's very easy to get. You basically get your permit right on the spot when you go to your sheriff's office. They do a quick background check and they print out a permit and give it to you right there on the spot in most places, okay? And it's a shall issue state. So unless you have something crazy in your background, they have to give you the permit within 45 days max, okay? The background check can't go more than 45 days. So I have a PA concealed carry permit, and my permit is acknowledged by like 30 states. So I can carry in probably like almost every state except the big, East Coast and West Coast states that are, anti-gun. But for the most part, Virginia, where I was driving through, I could carry there, concealed. Tennessee, where I was going. So this is the lesson here, okay? So for me to get to Tennessee, I had to drive over Maryland, okay? Just a little strip of Maryland because I live in north central Pennsylvania. And so the part of Maryland that I had to drive through is like western Maryland, close to the mountainous area of Maryland, okay, like where Maryland meets West Virginia. So I had to go through just a little sliver of Maryland, literally like 10 or 20 miles long. That's it, okay? And there's like one town that I had to drive through, but because of that, I had to stop, take the gun out of my car, from the inside of my car. I had a fanny pack, and it was on my waist while I was driving in PA. I stopped, I took the gun out, put it in a locked container, and put it in my trunk according to, federal law, okay, for interstate travel with a firearm, okay. And so we did that right before we got into Maryland because I didn't want to get, basically arrested and turn into a criminal for carrying a firearm on me, which is legal in PA, legal in Virginia, but in Maryland you're basically a felon, okay? So it's crazy how it's like total night and day difference. So I had to stop, take my gun out of the car, put it in the trunk, and then drive across Maryland. And we were in such a rush to get to my parents that we didn't want to stop. And, I didn't feel like stopping, taking the gun out again, reloading it, and then putting it on my person or securing it somewhere where I can access it. So we just kept driving, and the whole time my firearm and ammo was in the trunk locked up. Okay, so we just kept going because we were in a rush. It was getting dark, and that's when that situation happened, okay? And the first thing that came to my head when this whole situation went down, especially when he started to chase us, was, oh snap, I don't have my gun with me. It's in the trunk. And I felt like I was naked almost, because I knew that if he started trying to ram our car, there's nothing I can do to disable his vehicle or to stop him. Okay, I would have to basically ram his car and, you know, basically play demolition derby with him. Okay, there was no tool that I had in the vehicle that I could use to stop his vehicle or to stop him. Okay, it was locked up in the trunk. So that's a big lesson, is that if you are traveling through blue states like Maryland or anti-gun states, make sure once you cross over that state and you get into a free state, an American state, as I like to say, take your gun out of the lock container and bring it back into your car, because you never know when you might need it. Okay. So that's a huge lesson, is that carry all the time, even when you're on the highway. Or you may not think that because you're in your car and you're on the highway, you may think that, oh, you know, what's going to happen? I'm on the highway, I'm in my car, nobody's going to rob me when I'm in my car, nobody's going to do anything to me because I'm in my car and I'm driving, you know, because that's just, you know, the way we think, is that we think that like robberies and assaults and murders, they happen on the street somewhere. You know, if you're walking around in a bad neighborhood on foot and, you know, you pass through a bad area and somebody robs you, that's what we normally think because of Hollywood. And usually that's just the way things happen, you know. It's very rare for something like this to happen to people. It's usually when you're out and about on foot. So because of that, I felt like, okay, I don't need my gun with me because I'm on the interstate. What's going to happen to me? There's cars all around me. There's people. The highway's busy. I mean, who would be crazy enough to try to, you know, run me off the road and collide with me? But it happened, guys. Okay, it happened. The thing that you would think that would never happen and sounds like completely insane actually happened to me, okay? And I almost died, all right? And I've had several near-death experiences in my life. I had one 2 years ago during the lockdowns. Some crazy lady almost hit me with her car. She literally missed me by a foot. I had to move out of the way. She was intoxicated, and I was standing outside on the road, and she almost hit me with her car. So I've had a lot of near-death experiences. I'm not BSing you. This story is 100% true. I didn't make this up. I have no reason to make this up. I'm trying to help you guys learn, okay? So number one lesson is carry as much as possible. Even if you're in your car and you're on the interstate or you're just driving, you just never know these days, okay? Somebody could pull up next to you and, you know, you could be at a red light. Someone could pull up next to you and just point a gun at you and say, give me all your money. Or they could just blast you, you know, whatever. There's all kinds of sick, crazy people in this world, like the guy that tried to hit me, okay, and tried to run me off the road. And so, you know, that's the biggest lesson right there. Carry all the time. If you're traveling across state lines, if you're crossing over a blue state, once you get out of the blue state, stop your car, get your gun out from your trunk or your locked container as according to federal law, because you have to lock it up. You know, if you have it locked up and you get stopped in a blue state that doesn't recognize your pistol permit, they can't touch you because you have everything locked up and you're protected under federal law. But if you have your gun on your person and you're driving through, let's say, New York, where I used to live, New York doesn't honor any out-of-state pistol permits whatsoever. And if you're even just touching a pistol in New York and you don't have a permit for that pistol and it's not registered to you, that's a felony, actually, okay? A felony, all right? But if you have that pistol locked up in a container, they can't do anything to you because, you know, you have a peaceable journey law, okay, under federal law. So just make sure to stop, take your gun out, you know, carry as much as possible, especially on the road. You know, these days you just never know. Another lesson that I learned is that, well, not so much a lesson for me because I already knew this, but maybe a lesson for you. is that, these days, if you watch a lot of people, when they talk about concealed carry and self-defense, the type of ammunition that people recommend is those rapidly expanding bullets like the Spear Gold Dot, the new punch bullets, basically a rapidly expanding hollow point that doesn't over-penetrate, okay? That's like the biggest thing, is we don't want over-penetration, and I hear that all the time. And I'm here to tell you guys that that is BS, okay? First of all, if I'm going to have to use my self-defense firearm at somebody, okay, and I've committed in my head that I have to use deadly force against someone, if there's a chance, even a small chance, that there's somebody behind my target, my threat, whether I have a Spear Gold Dot or whether I have a Full Metal Jacket, I'm not going to take that shot, even if there's a 1% chance that I could hit somebody, because even with those rapidly expanding bullets, you still don't know if that bullet's going to pass through. You can still miss your target, okay? So that whole thing about over-penetration, in my opinion, is overhyped, and especially if you're in a situation like I was in, where you have to actually disable a vehicle and penetrate through hard materials, okay? We're not talking about the human body. We're talking about engine parts. We're talking about auto glass. We're talking about tires, okay? A Spear Gold Dot or some kind of soft hollow point bullet is just not going to do any physical damage to a vehicle, okay? But if you have at least Full Metal Jacket, you can penetrate much deeper into an engine compartment of an automobile and damage something and reach something important, versus if you just have hollow points, it's going to break apart and it's not going to penetrate much. It's not going to do much damage. Same thing if you have to punch through a door. Like if I had to shoot that driver to disable him and stop him from, killing us and running us off the road, I have a much better chance at getting a good hit on him if I have a Full Metal Jacket than if I have a hollow point, all right? Because punching through a car door, believe it or not, it will make a hollow point expand, and it's not going to have a straight trajectory. So I'm not saying you should put Full Metal Jackets or penetrators in all of your self-defense concealed carry ammunition, but you should stack it, like alternate it, 1 round hollow point, 1 round Full Metal Jacket, 1 round hollow point, 1 round Full Metal Jacket, okay? Alternate them. Even if, let's say, your first 3 rounds in your magazine are hollow points, because you want to get those hollow points the first couple of shots, and then after that start alternating, that's okay too, okay? But you want to have some kind of ammunition that can penetrate, whether it's a Full Metal Jacket, whether it's an extreme penetrator from like Underwood ammo, or some kind of a solid bullet, even a hard cast bullet. It sounds funny to carry barrel loads for concealed carry, but you never know. And you could even have a separate magazine or a separate speed loader if you're using a revolver. By the way, I had my 44 Magnum with me, and I had 240 grain XTP hollow points alternating with 245 grain Full Metal Jackets in the cylinder, and I had 3 speed loaders on my person, but they were locked away, so I didn't have access to them. So that's something to think about, okay? Have some penetrators. You never know what situation you're in, whether you have to disable a car. You never know where your attacker is going to be shooting at you from. What if you have to shoot through a wall? What if you have to shoot through a dumpster or something, You can't just assume that every self-defense situation is going to be the bad guy standing square at you with his whole frontal portion, presented to you, and he's not wearing any armor. He's not standing in front of anything. He's not trying to hide. He's not in a vehicle. Yeah, in that situation, of course, a hollow point is great because, you're going to do a lot of damage and you're going to stop him quickly. But if he's hiding behind something, if he's in a car, if you have to disable a car, etc. So that's another lesson. And then finally, this is kind of more to do with prepping. You know, for those of you guys out there that are preppers, because I do have a lot of preppers that watch me. This is a prepping channel, obviously. You know, there's a lot of people out there that want to move to places like West Virginia or Appalachia because they feel that it's a great place for preppers. And, you know, this particular part of Virginia where I was driving through, southwestern Virginia, they have some of the poorest places in the whole country, okay? Southwestern Virginia, southeastern Kentucky, you know, that whole area, West Virginia as well. You know, the poverty rates are over 25%. I mean, that is just absolutely insane. Those are some of the poorest places in the country, and they're also infested with, you know, drugs, meth, heroin. I mean, West Virginia has an opioid epidemic. All those former coal mining areas are all infested with drugs. And, you know, these are the kinds of people that you would have to live with if you were to move to a place like that for the purposes of being, you know, in a safer location from a prepping point of view. Yeah, those places are very isolated. They're, you know, far away from the big cities, but you're surrounded by, you know, meth heads and, you know, people that haven't worked in 10 years, you know, and, you know, just really, really poor people. And, you know, I'm not trying to say that all poor people are bad, but the fact is that areas that are poor usually have more crime, more drugs. So that's something to think about. You know, if you think you're going to move to West Virginia because it's safer from a prepping point of view, I'm here to tell you that, you know, there's a lot of sketchy characters in those places, okay, because of the drugs there, because of the poverty. So you really have to, you know, watch your back. You have to keep an eye on your possessions too, okay? So take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.